And
So what does that have to do with Bitcoin?
well, no, it's just the whole thing with gold and Bitcoin. And what happens is mines get abandoned as the price goes down because the cost of mining gold goes up. So let's say your average cost to mine an ounce of gold is $1,700 or $1,800. So you close down. But if gold goes over 2,000, it becomes profitable again. So a lot of those old gold mines that have been abandoned will be reopened.
Well, you know what the Connell Corp used to do when everyone was mining for gold? They were the ones leasing the equipment.
Well, it's probably a good business right
Yeah,
now.
they're like, oh, we're not looking for gold, but here's the tools to show you could look for it.
Yeah, but you can bet that there's people now searching for abandoned mines and buying these things and thinking about reopening them.
So, Dad, is that getting you bullish on Bitcoin, even though that has zero to do with it?
No.
So no, it was just funny. Dad just was going over how he was seeing the Bitcoin price, and then he started looking up papers. What does that have to do with Bitcoin? That has zero to do with any of it.
Well, it's all the same speculation away.
No, it's not, though. I completely disagree.
Well, it is in the sense that gold and Bitcoin are both going to move when people think that there's a collapsing dollar or that currency is going to the gutter. So it does make sense.
I just mean Bitcoin's going to take over, I think, as the digital gold eventually. Like, I just think that's where we're heading in the world. When you look at everyone on an E-Trade or Fidelity, all your money is digitalized. It's just a matter of time when you really look at where the world's going. I really think Bitcoin's good for the world too.
Yeah, I mean, time will tell. But for
you were excited seeing that go to 11,000 last night.
Well, definitely. I own a couple Bitcoin. So, I don't really have an opinion on it. I don't own any gold, and I do own Bitcoin. I don't own it for any other factor than it's a speculative play, and I could see it going up off of that. I don't even understand it.
But Dan, right there, think about that for a second. You're a young guy. You don't own any gold, but you own a couple of Bitcoin, and you just own it because.
To be honest, I'm glad we're talking about gold because I'm not about to buy gold after the massive run it's gone on, but I'm sitting on the sidelines feeling like an idiot, feeling like I should have been in gold.
You're not on the sidelines. You own 2 Bitcoin.
Well, no, I mean from gold. It's crazy. I was thinking about it this morning, and it seems like from my vantage point, the market almost feels like it's hanging on by a thread and wants to have a massive sell-off. But then I'm seeing everyone come on TV, talk about gold, talk about how the market's beyond overvalued and how it's going to come down hard. And I'm starting to wonder if this is one of those moments where you buy when there's fear. Because there's definitely a lot of fear going on. And even though we haven't quite seen the sell-off yet, and maybe it comes, maybe it doesn't, it definitely feels like people are in panic mode. People are flooding into gold. The dollar is going down. I think there's a lot of people that think that if the dollar goes below a certain point, it's terrible for the stock market. So I'm sitting here and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And
I think a lot of it's the China talk with the whole, like what Dad brought up with the currency potential, like the actual capital war. Because I was reading a piece on that earlier, how there's a big difference between the trade war and then getting into what Dad was talking about the bonds, about the deficit, about, being able to manipulate the currencies. And that, I think that's where, when you look at why gold is so bullish right now in Bitcoin, I think that's just a fear with the sentiment in the world is there a chance this trade war escalates to money?
Yeah, could you kind of speak on that a little bit? Because I remember one time you told me that if China wanted, they can collapse the U.S. stock market overnight based on the value that they hold in it. We'll talk about what Mike's talking about, like elaborate on it.
Yeah, at the end of the day, China's going to do what's best for them, and it's definitely not in their interest.
Yeah, they lose a
create havoc here, regardless of what all the talk is with the election and.
Well, is that because also, Dad, they're owed so much money by us?
Yeah, and they also they fear sanctions against themselves.
Well, I'll also highlight for our watchers, how much are we in debt to China? Isn't that kind of like the clutch we have too, is like the overall, before even Trump came in office, it was this, well, we have to play good soldiers here together. We owe you so much money. You need that money. I mean, that's kind of what's kept peace in a way, right?
Well, look, they own a ton of our U.S. bonds, and that is definitely a factor in everything. What happens if they stop owning them and start selling them in a big way? I mean, no one really knows, but I don't know what the reason would be for them to do that.
I mean, would the reason be possibly just to make it where, and I don't even know if this would cause that, but to make it where they have a currency that's in power? Like right now, we obviously have the most valued currency, and our currency is starting to fall. If behind closed doors, they wanted it to be the opposite, which I don't know if that benefits them or not, but would that be a reason to?
I think any disruption with currency does not benefit anybody, and China's right in the middle of it. They got so many other issues right now.
It's like crazy.
I don't think they want to start with this. The more interesting thing is Eastman Kodak, one of the oldest companies out of Rochester, New York, got quite a bit of money to make some of the chemicals for pharmacies. It's because they were able to convert their plants, because chemicals are used for photography. So they could use those plants to make pharmacy products.
What's the ticker on that?
It used to be EK. I think it's like EKAD, but can you look it up to see what it is?
EKAD?
I don't know if that's it. I just know it's a what?
What's the name of the company?
It's amazing to even hear anyone say what's the name of the Eastman Kodak. I mean, it's one of the, like in the 1960s, 70s, everyone knew who Eastman Kodak was.
When was the last time you think they brought that up on CNBC?
Today.
Today?
Today. They brought it up.
They're up 216% right now.
Where's Mark Roberts here? Come on.
What's the symbol?
KODK. I'm going to share it on here. God, anyone who's watching this, be careful.
Yeah, what happened to that Vuzu company? Talk about something that shit the bed.
Yeah, but this stock was, this Eastman Kodak was basically, dead on arrival.
Oh, how did we miss this yesterday? Come on.
This is a stock that there's going to be people jumping all over for day trading purposes. Dad, if you were looking at the pre-market chart, which levels would you look at to either go long or short here if you were a day trader?
Man, maybe 7.5-ish. 7, yeah.
To go long, to try and back on the upside.
Or 5.25, 7.5.
Yeah, and then if for whatever reason it breaks to the downside below 650, it could turn into a massive short.
Yeah, except it's real. I mean, the government is behind it. This is what we want to do. We want to have our own supply chain. This is going to be the way of it going forward for these industrial, companies that can help the supply chain. It's amazing.
Yeah, this will be a fun stock to watch today.
They're out of Rochester, New York.
So, Dad, back to what we were saying at the beginning here. I mean, you're obviously seeing the same narrative as everybody else here. You watch CNBC, you watch Bloomberg. People are obsessing over gold right now, and they're kind of what seems to be in panic mode. What's your overall take on the market? Are you nervous? Are you buying? What are you thinking?
I'm always nervous, but I think gold is probably overdone here. I think I would not be a buyer of gold here.
And what is going to ultimately cause gold to? Obviously, this is a tough question because what causes things to come down is always what's ever around the corner that people.
But Dan, that's a good point you bring up. Are you like the correlation in the past to gold being at all-time highs and the market dipping? Is that a causation or a correlation? Like, is there anything that no matter what coincides with that, or is there a chance gold can be up to where it is and the market still goes up?
Well, look, gold used to go up because of inflation fears. So the inflation is in the weak dollar. That's where the fear comes in. So that's why it's correlated. But and the market goes down when there's massive inflation. So, obviously we don't really have inflation yet. So we don't know if that's going to play out. But there will be inflation when you consider it's more expensive to make things here than it is in China. And if the Eastman Kodak situation gets multiplied, then you're going to have inflation here at some point. It's got to happen. The cost of products is going to go up because the cost of labor is going up. Maybe the robotics keeps it intact to some extent, but labor is much more expensive here than it is in China. We all know that.
And one would think that that's good for the stocks. I mean, we're, obviously a morning show that likes to talk about investing and talking about the stock market. How is that not a great thing for assets in general? And on the surface, it looks like it is, but why is that not what people are saying? They're saying the complete opposite.
Because whenever there's inflation, it's hard for companies like everyone else to control what their expenses are, because their expenses are constantly going up. Every cost they have is going up, and can they do pricing that keeps up with that? And usually you can't.
So basically you're saying that inflation, if it really happens, is going to almost start at the supply level where, like, for example, a company like Apple, it's going to cost them a lot more to get the products together to make their phone. Whether or not then they're going to be able to double the price to the consumer, that might be years out. I get what you're saying. So
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, there's only so far you can go without inflation by bringing stuff back to the United States and not making it in China, India, Mexico, wherever.
No, makes sense. So are there any stocks you're looking at right now?
Yeah, but the other thing is, when you're talking about gold, and I guess it's similar with Bitcoin, but not quite the same. As it goes up, more supply comes on the market, either through new mines opening up because you could mine it at a higher price, or less people are able to buy jewelry because they can't afford it. For example, in India, the Indians are big gold buyers, and they have gold during wedding season.
Yeah,
I think they call it. And rather than solid gold, they now hollow it out, so it becomes less expensive. So they're going to use less supply. So you got a situation where there'll be more supply of gold and less buying of gold
because of the price.
Because of the price. So it's a natural way to keep the price from going through the roof, other than speculative. And of course,
be able to get Bitcoin with a Starbucks coffee.
Yeah, but Bitcoin is all speculative
for now.
There's nothing you could do with it. You can't wear it around your neck for now.
Yes. Someone said that yesterday. I heard someone say, I'm not quite sure who, that Bitcoin sees all of its movement for the whole entire year in a 10-day stretch. And the problem is that you have no idea when that 10-day stretch is going to occur. And clearly right now we're in the middle of it. Mike, we're lucky to be hodlers of Bitcoin because we're catching it right now going up. But I just thought that was interesting. Also, I have this pulled up because I was thinking about maybe buying some VGK, which is the European Vanguard fund, just based off of the fact that if the dollar is weakening, Europe is going to be stronger as far as stocks and the performance. So I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on that play, just as a whole. Obviously, it's not a stock, but it tracks several stocks. And, I think it just could be interesting because maybe we're heading into a period where Europe starts to catch up.
I think it's a great idea. Just owning non-dollar assets can't hurt if you have a weak dollar.
That just bores me. Like, that's like me hanging out at the library looking at that.
I mean, like, no, it bores me too, but I already have a few different mutual funds, and I'm thinking about getting out of one that's more focused on domestic and just putting that into the other one. Because, aside from my maniac trading activity that I do. I like to have some mutual funds out there that are just my safe haven.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I have 3 mutual funds and an IRA and an ETF.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got,
Mike, don't you have a precious metal ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're invested in gold too.
But my precious metals one has way less in it than the rest. Keep in mind, I'm long 3 Bitcoin, as well as a little Tezos, Ethereum, and Chainlink. So, and for our viewers, those are security. Tezos is to Bitcoin what Chainlink is to Ethereum for the actual transaction security. I'm bullish on all 4 of those. I would tread carefully for anyone that doesn't really understand the space, or like Bob just said, it's speculative right now. But with where the world's heading, we keep talking about money printing, inflation, deflation. The reality is, for a healthy world economy, I'm beyond bullish on cryptocurrency. I don't see how it's not front and center in the world and startup land and being able to work together with people all over the world. We see how successful Fiverr has been on a platform. We talk about what Twitter could be doing with subscription models. All of those things, to me, go back to having frictionless transactions and peer-to-peer ability to trust with smart contracts. Cryptocurrency. The writing's on the wall.
Well, let's switch gears here. What are your, and this comes from a request from Vaz, who watches our show a lot, has a lot of good input. He's been talking about wanting to help us just, evolve it a little bit.
I think we should bring Vaz on the Lodell team. Yank him over from DoorDash.
I agree. We talk about it all the time. But anyway, Vaz wants us to talk about the virtual schooling stocks a little bit, which, Mike, I know you've been big on. Well, he's got a few that he threw at me that we could talk about. One is obviously Chegg, which we could start with that chart. That's not the one I have pulled up. Problem with Chegg, in my opinion, is when you look at the chart, it's just gone on such a massive run that, scares me a little. But
I've been in and out of this 3 times. Just off, I'm with you, Dan. It's like Zillow for me, where I'm constantly like, oh, is this thing up too much? Let me get out of it. And it just keeps going up.
Tell me, Dad, while you look at the Chegg chart, Mike, talk about Chegg. Like, what are they exactly? Because
they're a textbook rental company. So the reason Chegg, when you think about it, Dan, back when we were in the early days, if you remember when we were at University of Arizona with Jeff, and I was even out there with Paul at one point, they were marketing these egg keychains that were also like cracked egg keychains in their early days.
Yeah, but it's a rental. It's a textbook.
They're a rental textbook company. Yeah. The reason they've been going through the roof is this notion of homeschooling for one, and people needing books delivered because of the whole, not showing up to do something in person. So there's speculation that Chegg's helping a lot of the schools around the country with textbooks for their students. But there's still a lot of speculation, and I feel like the stock has run up way too much off of everyone just thinking they're going to be front and center used for all the curriculums, which is not the case. So
what are your thoughts on the chart specifically?
Yeah, I mean, the chart has got a big gap in it, between 45 and 52. And, it's really difficult to imagine just a runaway stock in a rental. Isn't it easy to enter this market?
I mean, when you think about it, we're actually starting to test out the waters in textbooks with Lodell.
I'm going to bring up a couple here because, I'm more curious on just the charts themselves and the stories of the company, because the stories of the company, they've been out for a while. If the stock's acting well, to me,
this isn't a new company by any means. So
what, Chegg?
Chegg, they've been around for a long time.
That's my point. Yeah.
The pandemic, when we think about winners and losers, I kind of look at a Peloton as an analogy with fitness. I think they've gotten this same sort of momentum off of the stay-at-home mentality and where we're heading with schooling. So you're going to see way more online classes, and the street seems to think they're a huge winner out of that. It'll be interesting to see how much new business they bring in, and are they going to be adapting their model at all to make more money off of people using their books? I don't know.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. Curious to see. I've been in this APT stock, not to switch gears here, but I'm switching gears because I just want to talk about it a little bit. No, I mean, they've been they've been acting well. I mean, first off, it's a great day trading stock. They haven't really convincingly been able to break through 24 yet. But I mean, Dad, am I out of my mind here for trying to stick with this story? Is it done with, or has it not truly begun?
Well, look, I mean, you could day trade it every day, and as long as it's working, you keep going with it and forget the story. Just day trade it.
But what's wrong with the story? These guys sell the equipment that is now going to be used commonly. Like
I think the story is good. I don't know if the fundamentals have caught up to the price of the stock yet, but for that matter, you could say that about Zoom and Peloton and all these others, right? So
you could really say it about anybody, right?
Mm-hmm. But the other end beyond, where they've done the opposite, where people like forget, I guess, what they're up to.
Anything that works as a day trading vehicle, why not stick with it?
Twitter has been a great day trading vehicle the last few days. Dan, I got out a little prematurely yesterday. Timed it well at the bottom. I'm annoyed I didn't hold it all day.
I mean, look where it is right now. You didn't really get out that prematurely. Maybe you did. You could have gotten out at 36.80, but now you have a chance to get right back in where you got out.
Right where I got out. Yeah.
This stock, I don't quite understand. I mean, Dad, give us your thoughts on it, because here's my take. When I see the NASDAQ and all the stocks being ones that lead the rally yesterday, and they were all strong, and Twitter comes out, they have what seems like good earnings, even though their earnings actually sucked. They just had an increase in users. So, so at the end of the day, I kind of looked at yesterday as a day where you expect Twitter to be up big because they gave
Dan, you said it best, and they want to see the ad model come out. It's all until it's out.
It was if I'm right, and that's what I was texting you yesterday, I was like, my only fear here is at the end of the day, when the dust settled from that run-up activity that happened a couple of days ago, the big money really wants to actually see them walk, because right now they're talking talk. If I'm right, their stock's going nowhere because they're far out from doing that. And if you actually read what Dorsey was saying, he wasn't saying that they're coming out with the subscription model tomorrow. He's saying that they could see a world where those things happen.
Dorsey is also he's a maverick with the media, like Elon Musk is. He's very good at planting seeds and then pivoting. And he has that, trust me, just like he did with Square. I take things he says with a grain of salt.
I'm more saying from the stock's point of view, if we're talking about buying it now or trading it, if what the Wall Street money is looking to see is for them to actually walk the walk on turning into a subscription model, their stock is not going anywhere soon until that actually
I think this is going to happen, Dan, sooner than we think, though. I really think they are working on something like diligently behind closed doors on that. They have no choice, really, like as a company. So
yeah, it could be. Bob, when you look at the chart, what are you seeing exactly? Because
what I see is people were excited by the earnings. The traders all jumped in, and then there was no follow through by real solid buying, and then the traders sold out. So maybe it has to do a little bit of consolidating, and if people really believe there's going to be a subscription model, fundamentally, then the stock will form a nice base and start to move up again. But you could tell it was all traders. It ran up in front of the earnings. Earnings came out, and there was no follow through. So
it's like mind-boggling. Dan, I know we've talked about it at length for years. They have so much advertising funnel potential that they haven't taken advantage of, especially now with all the fake news talk. They need to get this rocking.
Definitely. And
helpareporterout.com is a prime. When you go to hero.com, that's that site where you're able to send in submissions for helping reporters with on-demand news. The combination of that and the app Citizen, if I'm Twitter, I'm figuring out how to bring both of those in to my umbrella as soon as possible and getting this subscription model off the ground.
Yeah. I mean,
well, look, they're going to try, and if it works, fine. I mean, Dorsey kind of has left the door open. He hired the main guy to do it, and then he's also said it may not happen. So he's covered.
Dorsey's more passionate about Square than Twitter, and he has been since Square came around. When you start two companies like that, I mean, we see how hard it is to run one business. This guy is having a dream and starting Square, his board with Twitter has been frustrated because he needs to be putting that brain power into Twitter more.
The only thing that encourages me about Twitter is when you do look at their chart, it looks like up until what's happened recently, it was trending down, where it would gap down and then it would flag up and then gap down. And here, when it was at the end of June, looking like it was going to continue doing that, it looks like it might have just broken that entire trend, but now it's got to actually break it. And is that is that a good way to look at it? Where like if this stock can't hold above almost where it's at right now, then it could just easily have been a fake out with these earnings and could just go way back down.
Well, I think you can go to the low made was $20 back in March or February, whenever that was, and it's made higher lows ever since then. And, it could go as low as 33, 34 and still be in an uptrend.
So we're seeing it in an uptrend now.
Yeah, it's definitely in an uptrend.
All right, well, then I'm because I've been averaging down, but at this point, it's I'm done buying anymore. So
I'm just day trading that one.
Have you guys heard of this Jamf stock yet?
No.
Dad, I figured this is a stock you would know about just because of their affiliation with Apple. This company is basically connected to Apple. I know Vaz's wife works for them, and they just went public the other day. And they basically are affiliated with distributing and helping train companies all over the world on Apple products. It's an interesting affiliation with Apple. They did just go public.
Does Apple actually have input, or is it away from Apple?
I'm going to have to ask Vaz about that. I'm not entirely sure, but I figure this is an interesting stock. He's actually texting the answer right now to that question, so I'll let you know in a minute. But Dad, I figure this is an interesting stock for you to follow because it kind of reminds me of the Sabre to the airlines play. Yes, Apple uses them in all the stores.
Interesting.
It's a mobile.
Yeah, I guess it'll do well as the stores reopen.
And no, Vaz said if people work remote, it manages their devices. So it's a mobile management system.
Nothing to do with that. Okay.
Controls all the employees.
And what price did it go public?
I think it went public at like 24 and change. It had a huge pop the day that it went public. I mean, the thing was up.
Ran up to 42.5.
Yep.
Oh, let's see. It might have gone higher.
Oh, they just went public?
51.
Yeah, Mike, they went public on Thursday.
Yeah. I don't know.
It'll be an interesting stock to keep an eye on. All right, well, last thoughts on the day here. It's the market looks like it's going to open down. Again, this feels like one of those moments when even though we haven't quite seen a big sell-off, and I don't know if it's coming, feels like maybe there's a lot of fear out there, and maybe this is an interesting buying opportunity. I'm kind of hesitant, and I already am comfortable with what I'm doing with my positions, but yeah, curious to hear your guys' thoughts here.
Good buying day, I think. Well,
the Dow is probably down because of Triple M and McDonald's. McDonald's kind of disappeared.
That shocked me. I'm glad I didn't buy that stock heading into earnings. I was figuring a better run there.
But I'm looking now. I don't know what they said in their conference call, but the stock was down almost, 2 or 3%, and now it's almost unchanged. So they must have said some pretty positive stuff.
I mean, I think they're set up nicely here.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong stock.
My only thing with McDonald's is when you really think about their locations and when people are mostly in the mentality of going to McDonald's, they're strategically placed near, big corporate work parks and gas stations and places that cater to people that are going about their day in a normal way. And when people are working remote or they're staying at home and they're not in a normal routine, might just not be going to McDonald's quite as much, even though it is obviously a cheap play, it's recession proof and all those things,
I mean, but when you think of all the people on road trips too that are still taking trips but not on flights, they're driving. McDonald's is front and center everywhere.
Outweigh.
That's why I liked it, because I feel like people are just feeling safe
And the germ aspect. I think people feel naturally secure with McDonald's with the whole pandemic and the virus when you think about where to eat.
Yeah, look, I saw that they beat on revenue, so clearly something. Right? But
Yeah, they're just spending a lot of money on the virus. Probably, I haven't read into it yet, but it is still down 1.5% or so.
And Dad, are you not around tomorrow?
I'm not around tomorrow. No.
All right, so Mike, maybe we'll do it and bring on a guest.
Yeah, let's get a guest on.
Let's get Vaz on.
Vaz, come on, guest tomorrow.
We'll talk to him and see if he's down.
Cool. All right, guys.
Bye.